Welcome to the special meeting of the Tgs&A committee. This is 7:30 on a Thursday evening, June 6th. The agenda has been published, and as you know, topics that are discussed are on the agenda. That's the way a special meeting works. So we'll stick to the items that we have published. You all have a copy of the agenda. And you'll notice that then there's a little handout package of various materials which we will get to momentarily. The first item is review and approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 12th. Here you have a copy of the minutes, and does anybody have any suggested changes? To clarify, down on section 6, it looked as if it was a typo, but it wasn't a typo, because after A, Harry made a motion to poll, and we had 8-1 vote, and then we made some changes. So I would like to insert before B, following discussion and revision of the draft ordinance in relation to the labeling of a recycled paper bag. Harry made a motion to informally apply. So with that amendment, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you to our recording secretary. What?
I abstain.
No, you don't have to. Do you know the change of
Even
rules?
if he wasn't
I
there?
was in La La Land on,
Yeah, I know. And for many years, if you didn't
March, whatever.
attend a meeting, you abstained. But that's different now.
that's different now?
That's different now, because all
Oh.
we're voting on are these minutes properly prepared. And
Oh.
if you could bring yourself to do
Oh,
that,
yeah, they're properly prepared.
then we will have a unanimous vote.
Is
Okay,
that
it
in
just wasn't
Robert's
there.
Rules of Order or somewhere else?
Yeah, apparently it's a Robert's Rules of Order, and Wayne has
Enlighten
You've
us
asked
committee
about it,
chairs
and
about
he
it.
said a couple times, yeah, that's the way it is now. You don't have to do that. Okay. The focus of the meeting really is to solidify and finalize the work that's gone on for the last couple of months in relationship to the bag. This meeting the regular meeting was postponed until tonight out of deference to the Connecticut General Assembly meeting, which adjourned last night. Their work is through. They may have a special session to consider tolls and some other items, but they were in a real rush to complete a whole bunch of legislation in the last couple of days. And our timing worked out very well on this, because they did pass on Monday night or Tuesday a fairly significant bag ordinance and an amendment that related to the bag issue. So what I forwarded to you the other day, an attachment, is an article from the Connecticut Mirror, which did a very good job of summarizing what actually happened. Won't read the whole thing to you, but what it does is say that effective on August 1st, the state is going to levy a fee of 10 cents per plastic bag. Plastic bag being defined as less than 4 mils. And they will start collecting that as if it were a tax, and the whole treatment of the processing for the merchants around the state will be on a parallel system, bolted onto the tax system. Then on July 1st of 2021, 2 years from now, it is banned plastic bags. So the revenue that the state will pick up this coming year and the next year is been estimated at $27 million right away. and then $26 million the next year. After that, after these next 2 years, where the state will get the benefits of these 10 cents per plastic bag, and that's an estimate, about the $27 million, the plastic bags will be banned. The state won't get the 10 cents. And so that's the extent of the revenue that they're going to get.
I think they don't really know yet, because certain stores will just stop, once they run out of their plastic bags, they'll probably stop issuing plastic
Very
bags.
good. So the state may not
Yeah.
get even that much.
Right.
No. What is also explained, as a matter of fact, this is meeting TGS&A, we have a guest who is the chairman of the Public Health and Safety, Mac Patrick.
That's me.
Who has joined us several times before as an honorary member of the committee.
Well,
There you go.
under duress.
Mac forwarded this on Tuesday morning. We woke up to this thing that something happened on Monday night. And what they're going to do is put this into effect. Something very interesting accompanies this, in that the amendment to the revenue bill that was proposed was fairly severe, and it had a paragraph in it that said the municipal, this has preemptory, this preempts any local ordinance concerning these matters, and this is the way it is. At the last minute, that got changed, and it got changed to a paragraph that we'll see in a moment, which is very significant, which allows the municipalities to enact provisions that are as severe or more severe than the state regulation. And it acknowledges the fact that municipalities can enact legislation that will apply a fee to a paper bag. And so it takes that topic that we've been wrestling with and gives some clarity from the state level as to how that stands. But they ask you to look at the next handout, which is,
I have a question basically on what you just said, because I've read that the new law that was, I believe, part of the budget prohibits towns from passing or enforcing, from passing new bans?
you were right, up to around 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday.
Okay.
Till it changed.
And then strange things happened.
Okay,
Because
then good.
I had copies of that, and
Okay.
there has been a mix-up in some public, or not public relations, but some public, because the people, they, well-meaning communications officers were working all over the printed, but it got amended.
Okay, good.
And it got amended to look like this. So I turn your attention to the next 3
It's like
pages.
picking up Dewey wins.
Oh, Lord, which was a wild scene up there. I turned a web browser on last night. Thank you, Terry Wood, because we were corresponding about this, and she said that the group is going to adjourn at 12 o'clock. Sine die, I don't know if I pronounce it, S-I-N-E-D-I-E, it's an official term that they only use once a year. So we're adjourned, no more business.
No matter what.
How do you pronounce it?
I don't know.
That's sine die. And so indeed, I turned the thing on, and they were running bills through like crazy, because at 12 o'clock, everything stopped. Now, they did open it up like 12:05 or something that went through. But that's what it was, and this was handled at very much the last minute. Here it is. It's an amendment to the bill that was out there, and it has the single-use bag, defines it for 4 mil, gives the date of effective date, which is August 1st. The material in the middle paragraphs has to do with how the revenues are reported to the state and authorizing the state to recognize it at revenue at a certain point. And then that last paragraph, which I'll draw your attention to, line 48. Nothing in this section. Matter of fact, why don't I read it out loud? Maybe for the audience, but why don't you all take a look at that and ponder it. Okay, so that second sentence is especially relevant. I corresponded with Wayne Fox today and asked him to address his view as to whether our ordinance would be restrictive or more restrictive than the provisions of that. And he said, well, in effect, we are compliant with the state. And in fact, our requirements are more restrictive than what the state has done. And he wrote that to me in a very nice email, which you have a copy of.
I disagree. I think that we are less restrictive because we don't require stores under 10,000 square feet to charge 10 cents a bag.
Yeah, to a certain date.
But as of August 1st of this year, every store, every retailer is charging 10 cents a bag. But we're not charging stores less than 10,000 square feet.
They're not charging 10 cents back. They're collecting a 10 cent tax. So it's not quite the same as we're allowing retailers to charge for paper bags.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I would just comment the wording from enacting or enforcing, because the situation is that several of our neighboring towns have ordinances like this now. So they're not enacting anything, they're just saying, okay, those ordinances are, you can, as long as they're within this, they work.
I haven't thought of a good analogy, but the state has established a foundation.
Baseline.
And
Yeah.
the state, and then allowing municipalities to build on it if they want. Certain municipalities, because there's like 70 municipalities in the state, I think.
Yeah, I know.
So many of them.
But-
This is
but-
all new, and so they have that foundation to work with.
But the point is, this
Others
is
have
sort of a
already-
guideline. It says, if your existing statute falls within it, then you're okay, because you can enforce that existing ordinance. In our case, we're enacting a new ordinance after this was passed with the thought that it is within the guideline. I mean, that's just that's why the wording is enacting or enforcing. Because if it didn't have enforcing, it would be a little bit, where does that leave?
A blue sky.
Where does that leave Westport and Greenwich and places that have their own ordinance?
To our concern about the 10,000 square feet, I could refer you to our ordinance, or I could also refer you to the summary sheet, which is the next page in this package.
I agree with Rob. Ours just deals with paper bags, doesn't do plastics.
Well, he means
10
the
cent
10
fee
cent.
for
Yeah, right.
The
paper
10
or
cents does
Yeah.
not, the Darien ordinance does not have a fee for plastic bags. It just bans them for stores over 10,000 feet and subsequently for all stores.
And our standard is 12 mil.
There would still be a fee for the plastic.
So,
No.
that brings us on.
Well, there would be a Connecticut fee.
Right, so
Right,
the Connecticut
yes.
fee, so if a
That's a
customer came
tax.
in and got a plastic and a paper bag, in theory, from a store over 10,000 square feet, they could in theory be getting a charge of 10 cents for the plastic that goes to the state, and then 10 cents for the paper that
Yeah.
goes to the town.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Well summarized.
Like Trader Joe's, is that a 10,000?
And why the
Yes.
10 cent per
10,000
paper?
square
Because our mission is not whether we personally agree with that, and there has been some discussion, but to draft an ordinance that implements, that describes that goal, the goal of our citizens who brought this up and have been promoting it, and we've complied to come up with the legislation, which will be on the floor of the RTM for the RTM to decide whether to pass it or not, and, or amend it or not.
And Wayne Fox has basically opined our ordinance fits within this carve out, if you
What
will.
will happen is, I don't know exactly, I have to talk to Donna at the office to see whether it would be appropriate to put in the
Include
hands
that.
of our RTM members the
Right.
state. So as to tamp it down, or we who have been following this thing closely can, we have our, we talk in code, you know, a lot. And I can understand why, you know, our colleagues might be a little confused. So if we put out maybe a fact sheet, I don't
Because the
think.
term supersedes isn't
to go-
really,
Well, often we
Right, 'cause
see an executive summary with some of the
no,
legislation.
I'm saying that this mandate does not necessarily supersede, it's not necessarily,
Yeah.
right? The one that's already, because they're two totally separate in that
So
one is
if,
plastic and one is
for
paper.
example, so that if this thing is voted down resoundingly,
They still have a 10
you're still
cent
gonna,
plastic.
you're gonna have to pay the 10 cents for the plastic bag.
Right.
And that's the way it is. All right.
So-
And
So
then
this
you
is
won't be
really,
able to-
it's really setting a minimum standard, because it's saying, if you, municipality X, have an ordinance now that is weaker than this, you're now subject to the, you know, the restrictions on regarding provision, meaning giving, sharing, giving to your customer, or selling bags to customers.
If you had a weaker one.
If you had a weaker one, in other words, it steps, I don't know if there are any, but that's the way. And for us, it's more, okay, we're gonna
Do we
be,
want to build something on that foundation?
or at least meet that. It doesn't, if it's, and if it's been judged as restrictive, that's, better or more, that's okay. For the state, the city, the state.
2 points. If a less than 10,000 square foot establishment sells something and offers a plastic bag, wouldn't Connecticut's law, the state's law, requiring them to pay 10 cents
Yes.
would be in effect?
That would apply, yes.
That would apply. So while they're using up their old stock, they'll have to pay that 10 cents, they'll have to pay that 10 cents.
Yes.
And then secondly, Wayne doesn't answer the other question here. I got the idea his objection to making the stores charge 10 cents for the paper bag was not in the
It's
which
a very
is not
interesting-
legal.
A very interesting situation that we will hear more about on Monday night.
Uh-huh.
But I will, probably from Wayne, or a question that's asked of him.
I think the thought is, what you're getting at is that with if the store's charging 10 cents for the paper bag, is that considered a tax?
Correct.
And
That's
the
what Wayne
question.
said.
And what you're
Early
saying
on.
is he hasn't really answered that.
He hasn't
Yeah.
answered that, at least not what I see.
And they're giving, in the last sentence of this amendment, they're giving everybody a lot of wiggle room on this matter.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
It'll be interesting to see how Wayne deals with the topic on Monday night, because clearly this has changed the playing field. That sentence has changed it, because I had no idea what was going on behind the scenes in Hartford, but there must have been discussion of this to the point where they decided to really spell it out, that the municipalities, there's nothing in here that would prohibit a municipality from putting a fee on paper. They use the word fee and they use the word paper. Now, in reference to our agenda, we have looked at, actually, let's review what we have, where we've been. In March, we had a real good meeting with cookies that settled down a lot of the language and the grammar that we have been wrestling with in the month or so before that. And that was called version 2.4 of our different versions. That went on to the Rules Committee without change. It went over to the town council's office for review, and it came back without change. So what we're going to consider, so when the Rules Committee, in the procedure, the Rules Committee sent it out for review, and it came back from review, Rules Committee said, okay, let's put it on the agenda. They didn't put it on the agenda for the very next meeting, because that was the budget meeting. But then they met last week, 2 weeks ago, they put it on Monday's meeting. So, surprise, what we're looking at, and what Donna sent out in the package to us all, was good old 2.4. It didn't have the 2.4 on the top of it, but it was properly packaged and brought up as a resolution. And so the warning, I love the word warning about this. I don't know.
I know.
That's standard.
Yeah. I don't know where that came from. Must be medieval. But item number 19-17, which is the last item on Monday's schedule, is the material that we have. So I could give you yet another copy of it here, but it is what we've been dealing with. At our last meeting, we had a vote, which was at that time A, B, and C on the vote. We had a motion to submit the recommendations to the PWC and PHS&C. We were at that time voting of whether we could release what we had worked on to our colleague committees. Since that time, the colleague committees have not changed it. Rules didn't change it. Town council doesn't change it. But I feel that from propriety, we should again vote as to whether we believe that this should be submitted to the RTM and recommend. Now and then here's what's new, and recommend that the RTM approve it. Now, you may vote, there are two parts to this. So we submit this to the RTM. The second vote will be whether you recommend it be approved or not. So, will somebody give us a motion?
I move to submit to the RTM the plastic bag ordinance as drafted by the TGS&A.
Somebody second that, please.
Seconded.
Is there any discussion of that?
I have one more question.
He's going to get a discussion. All right.
The exemptions that are in ours,
Yes.
is that more restrictive or less restrictive than the state? Does the state have any exemptions?
They're not relevant.
They're not relevant?
But
Why
it's an
not?
interesting question.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't thought about that, but
They say retailer as part of the state, and retailer is anybody that it could be a single person that offers transactions of tangible products for sale.
I believe the answer to the question is they're talking about a single-use checkout bag. And this is an amendment you're looking at, not the actual act. So the actual act talks about single-use checkout bags. I'm sure there's an elaborate description, but pretty much everybody knows what a single-use checkout bag is, as opposed to the ones you put your cucumbers in.
They define it. I mean, yeah, it's defined.
Well,
we
we
know
do,
that
but
before we
I'm
vote?
talking about the state.
Yes.
And
You're on 6, line 6.
Oh, you do have it?
Take a look at the
What
way the
does it say?
state
They covered that.
defines
Line
it
6?
in line 4, beginning in line 4.
Okay.
Does not include.
Yeah, I mean, all these things, like, I was at the Palmer's Deli. Okay, that's a plastic bag that they put your roast beef in. And, I don't know that we talk about deli bags, but I think we all know that we're talking about bags that are not checkout bags.
Right.
So this doesn't talk about deli bags either.
Is that the type of exemption you were asking about, Joe?
It says a bag that
Huh?
contains meat.
Yes.
So that's
How about cheese?
meat and seafood, cheese isn't included.
Yeah,
No.
well, there you go.
I mean, I asked
Yeah,
about
like
exemptions
Samaritans.
also because, didn't we go through a lot about nonprofits and things such as that?
It's at, the state says point of sale. So if you're getting at the meat counter, the cheese counter, the bread counter, that's not at your point of sale.
Right, that's right, but I mean, the other, it's Joe, right?
Right.
You're asking about exemptions, is what
The
other, was that
exemptions
the?
that we have, they have some too, but do they line up? Or are we?
Okay, so it's about that type of exemption.
I think
Okay,
we
I
have
was
a
thinking
few
maybe
more.
other exemptions
No,
about
it just-
whether nonprofits or something like that.
No, no.
I think the point of sale pretty much delineates between what we say
Yeah.
versus what the state says.
Yeah.
Your garment bags, your food bags that you put your avocados in.
Yeah,
As long as it's
I
not
thi-
at the point of sale, and there's actually gotta be a sale. It can't be just a swap, it's
Maintains
gotta
a
be a
rate.
transaction
It's not
of
the
a
farmer's
tangible
market.
good.
Not the farmer's market, or because a store maintains a retail store within the state and sells tangible. So if you're there on your own, not from a store at the New Canaan Farmer's Market, the Darien, you're outside this.
So is the farmer's market covered?
That's the point, I think everybody knows.
Well, it depends on the dealer, on that person, because this applies to stores. So if you're from a store,
Yeah, if you're
by
from a store,
extension-
you're,
by extension, you're covered. I mean,
The
I-
state's gonna have to figure that out. I mean, I might argue that the farmer's market does count,
And I think a farmer's market would,
you know,
I'm
but,
looking at
It's
the
an
definition
established
of
retail place, it's
retailer
the same
by
place every
state.
week, and,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, yeah, but.
yeah,
All right, well, we have a motion on the floor.
we do.
It was seconded. We had a discussion. Is there anything other discussion? Therefore, we are voting on the motion to
Submit it to
Submit
the
it.
forward
RTM.
submit this to the RTM for their consideration. All in favor?
Yeah.
And that's unanimous. Now to the other topic of whether you would recommend that the RTM pass this legislation. Put you on the spot. But it's the second part of the thing. Did I get a motion to that effect?
I move.
And it's whether
Aye.
the voter would be in favor of, whether the voter would recommend that the body
Right.
pass the legislation or not. We have, if somebody second that?
I'll second it.
And now that's a motion on the floor, and it's seconded, and we have some discussion of that.
This is the second time we've done this, Bill.
Well, but this is in the situation where now we know Connecticut has passed the
Oh, I see,
statute
okay.
that actually
And-
starts, the
Yeah,
photography,
okay.
they start August, I think it is.
And it's
August
really
1st.
the first
August
time
1st.
we're voting and dealing with our recommendations to the RTM.
Mhm.
The other one, which is in those minutes, where we were passing it off to our colleague committees for their consideration. All right, so we had a motion, we had a second, we've had a good discussion.
Yeah.
Are there any other matters? All right, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, my gosh, it's also unanimous. What a pleasant
Observers.
surprise. To me, what a pleasant surprise.
No, that's nice that you
That's
can
nice.
report it as a unanimous vote.
Now, we have, is there other issues related to the item number 5 on the thing? Item number 4 is preparation of any report to the RTM. And I'm not used to doing that, but I've started it. It says, my name is such and such. My name is Jack Davis. At a special meeting of the committee held June 6th with 7 of 12 members, a quorum, and 7 of 12 members of the committee considered and voted, and I'll repeat these votes. And then as a background, I had to have something more to say to that. We began to consider this on such and such a date. We've had so many meetings, we've had 2 public hearing meetings, and members of the committee have been unanimous in their support of this work product. So that will be it. And if I get run over by a truck on Monday, then Joe will have the script.
All right.
But
As vice chairman to go ahead and do it.
You're not gonna be here?
No, I'm planning to do it, but after what happened to poor Seth at the last meeting.
That's right.
And Joanne, we gotta,
What happened to Seth?
Joanne got sick?
Seth was taken ill.
Oh, right, I know, that's right.
It
Seth
wasn't
was
there.
there, right, I
after,
do remember
when
that.
And then
after-
Joanne was on a
and then-
committee involved, and she had to recuse herself, and so.
Yeah. And then
Right,
poor-
I remember
poor
now.
Lois
It's coming back.
Snyder And I happened to be turning and looking at her when the news came to her that she was gonna have to run the meeting, and it was like, oh. So anyway, so that is the essence of the report that I will flush out.
But so, on the point of, or the town council's memo or advice, is that gonna be mentioned at all, or maybe it?
I would bet you it will be. It's not an agenda item, but there's
No, no,
so
but in
much
connection
discussion
with-
of this.
right, okay.
That someone is going to call or point of order or ask a question of the moderator, and I bet you then the moderator will defer to town council. And he'll have the opportunity to have his opinion as modified by what the state did.
Yeah, yeah. But you're not
And then
gonna
we
include
see
it as
this
part
in
of
this,
what you're not gonna include it, it wasn't included with the warning, I guess, so.
I'm not going to bring up, I'm
Yeah.
not going to bring up a controversy
Right.
that we have come to a resolution.
Yeah.
But right now, I'll acknowledge that controversy, which was the fee and the tax, and whether we've ridden through that. We prepared our draft legislation as we were
Yeah.
chartered to do. I would not be surprised if at some point after the resolution hits
It's
the
on the
floor
floor.
and the reports are made, if some well-meaning person said, Mr. Moderator, I move to amend the resolution by taking out paragraph 5, which is the Greenwich way it was handled in Greenwich. When they got to this point, they took out the paper bag charge of the evening on the floor of the RTM. So if that resolution comes up, if that amendment comes up and is voted on, if the amendment fails, then the legislation is to be discussed further and voted on. If the amendment passes, then the revised will go, and the RTM will have had a chance to say in public, and in all 100 people there, or 92 or whatever it will be, that this provision, which had been so thoroughly discussed, the RTM chooses to drop it out by striking paragraph 5 out of the legislation. And if they do that, then our resolution will go forward with that hole in it, and it will be just a plastic bag without mention of the paper.
I think that will come up because it's more in line with what the state doesn't have a fee on the paper bag.
It's in our draft, and it exceeds the state, and it is consistent with what the group in town that brought this to our attention wanted. It's inherent in their name, bring your own bag. It sets an environment where you should bring your own bag of paper or plastic. So acknowledging the fact that it is controversial and has been well discussed, I would be just as pleased that the RTM had an opportunity to vote on it, that amendment, and then proceed whether or not it passes with the rest of the resolution, which I would think would pass. So, normally when you draft something like this, you don't want amendments on the floor, and you don't want a whole lot of mechanics, because people don't understand it, and gets confusing, and sometimes you have problems. So normally, you take efforts to make sure that everything is bolted down, and you have a resolution that's going to be voted on, up or down. And this has it has that funny middle ground that we've been wrestling around. And if there is that amendment, I won't feel bad. I think it's a democracy, and let it be. And if someone asked me to wager whether it would pass, whether such an amendment would pass, I frankly don't know.
Well, I think the key is, as you talked about, you don't want to have confusion, so I think it's a good idea to, like you suggested, to have put in the packet, or no, it's too late to put it in the packet, we already received it, but I guess it would be a handout that night with the state
Yeah.
the state document.
You know, it was Mac who sent me that article from the Mirror, which
Mhm.
we had. And I think that's good. I don't know whether, okay, help me. Procedurally, whether to have a handout for the RTM, whether it should be an newspaper article, or whether it should be a summary, or whether it could be the actual text of the state legislation. It's only 3 pages.
Probably that would be the thing would be, because it's not editorialized,
Yeah, the Mirror article has a little bit of
you
a
know.
twist to it.
Mhm.
So I want to do the right thing. If,
Well, it
it
sets
could
the
be, I could
stage.
pull the salient points out and put them on a piece of paper, like a cover sheet for it, just as we prepared a cover sheet for our 7-page document. What do you think?
Well, I think that one of the things we don't talk about as much is one of the reasons for the 10 cents charge is to be business friendly. You know, the environmental group says we want to put the charge on it to discourage people. But, you know, to tell you the truth, like at Palmer's, you know, people will pay the dime. And Palmer's wants the dime because they're dealing with the hassle. So, you know, depending on how you couch this, and A, it's to encourage bring your own, but B, it's to create a friendlier business climate for our local merchants.
And how do you think the RTM will vote?
Well, it depends on how
We
you
don't know.
couch it.
That's why we
You know,
vote.
if you call it business friendly, then some people will vote for it. If you call it environmentally friendly, some other people will vote for it. But the trick is to get them all.
The problem I'm kind of working with is how to explain the issues without being an advocate. So if I explain, you know, even as you're just discussing it, it's sort of it's a fine line. I mean, you want to be, our obligation is to be neutral. Our obligation is to prepare an ordinance for the RTM to consider, and by gosh, we did it.
Rob-
Yes, and therefore, if you come prepared to talk about an amendment which doesn't, as of this moment, exist, you know, then our committee is, well, at least taking the position that maybe people want to do this, as opposed to taking the position, we've unanimously decided to do A, not A minus
Well, our
B.
position, as confirmed by our vote, is that we're saying this is a bill we want the RTM to consider. My remarks about 5 minutes ago are saying I would not be surprised if somebody stood up and did that.
Right, but being prepared or giving a handout on the possibility of removing section 5.
No, that's a different, no.
A handout on what the
handouts-
state did.
Oh, okay.
It's just,
understand.
it's just,
All right.
so people walk in, they haven't really paid attention, and all of a sudden, oh, the state passed it? What is theirs like? They can just kind of
Okay.
compare it.
Just a reference, yeah, to set the stage for what the town council may say.
Because there might be some people say, why do we even need to have an ordinance at all if the state's
state
doing
has
something?
Right, and there
So-
will be people who
Right,
say that.
right.
So when we had the public meetings, because, you know, just this is what we were working on, 7 pages or 9 pages long. You know, people come to a public hearing, they're not going to read the fine print. So what we did prepare was a fact sheet that we were just referring, it's in your package tonight, but we were referring to. I don't want to blizzard the RTM with a
No,
whole
I-
blizzard of paper, but maybe this page could be condensed and then the information that the state put on there, just to put something in their hands. Well, I've got a couple days to figure this out.
Okay.
Oh, my gosh.
No, we should just stay with what we
Yeah.
discussed.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be
I-
opening up.
We would
Right.
be, I would figure we'd be, but there are 85 other people out there.
Well, also.
By the way, I should mention that Monica McNally, who is
Exactly.
the chairman of the lead committee, which is Public Works, this last week made visits to the Education Committee, Finance and Budget, and Park and Rec. Who were invited to give a 5-minute briefing. Because while our 3 committees constitutes probably about 40 people or 45 people, there's the rest of the RTM that has not been involved in this. They knew about the public hearing, a few people attended, and also the articles in the newspaper have been thrashing through this. but she recognized that there are at least 50 people out there who hadn't really been involved in this, and so made an outreach effort to go to those committees. And outline it. We're getting a lot of good questions from people who were concerned.
Well, maybe what Joe's,
Easily answered, too.
You were at that meeting, right? The Board of Ed, I watched it on the TV.
Pardon me?
You were at the Board of Ed as well, meeting with her? Were you there?
We're missing one committee, there's 7 committees.
Yeah,
So we constitute 3 of them.
okay.
And Monica and I went to 3. So there's a one out there that I can't remember.
About
which
rules,
one?
PCNH?
but I think what Joe might be alluding to
I
is that.
think
that
PCNH was on it, was because of scheduling.
Yeah.
We just didn't get to them.
Maybe you shouldn't be handing out that state thing, maybe Monica should be doing that, because it's her, she's
lead
lead on it.
committee.
So maybe talk to her about that.
I will.
You just gotta stick to what our duty was
Yeah,
put
which is
together
words.
an ordinance.
Mhm.
Well, my remarks about the amendment, all I did here was to say it could possibly come up from some of our colleagues in the audience, and
Yeah, but it does.
just indicated that if it does come up, usually you feel like falling on your sword if that amendment comes up to something that you worked hard on. And in this case, it's part of the process. It's the Greenwich option. Exactly what happened there. Actually, it's not exactly. They started off, their first draft was 23-cent charge. And it was amended on the floor that night to come down to 10. And as soon as that amendment passed, somebody else stood up and says, well, take the whole doggone paragraph out. Anyway, it'll be interesting. Is there any, I can't ask if there's any further business because we're restricted on the agenda, but it's other issues related to the plastic paper bag ordinance. In that case, dropping down here, could I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second, anybody approve motion by standing up? Thank you, sir.